Welcome to the show, everyone. We are coming back to you with another rendition of this particular series being a pixel above the rest. This time around, we are going to hit the Super Genesis edition.
Super Genesis?
Super Genesis? Who is that? And
Wow,
what is that? All right, I take that back. We are actually going into the Sega Genesis. I'm looking at the logo, and I said Super. I don't know what the deal is with that. Anyhow, I'm your...
Biggie would be proud. Super Nintendo Sega Genesis.
Yes, indeed, he would. And I'm your host, Nick. With me, I have Dimitri.
Yes, sir.
And looping over to Mike.
Sega.
That is perfect. And like I said, we are going to be going over some of our Sega Genesis games that really hold the test of time.
Yeah, and also if you kind of want to know what we're talking about, if you want to pause the video and check out the NES edition of this that we did, feel free.
Good little plug there for a previous episode.
Early bird plug.
Yeah, and this time I think it was really appropriate. We couldn't really go over the Master System. Did anybody really have that? Come on.
I never had one.
Yeah, and
I saw somebody once with one. I went over their house, and I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know Sega made a console prior to the Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
That's how in the dark I was about it, up until I went to this guy's house, and I was like, wait, what is this? Like, you have this? Like, what?
I believe a lot of those same games got re-released onto the Genesis. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was the case.
I just know it had some of the worst box art of any. Every
that
game had
grid?
the same grid.
That grid, man. That grid looks great.
It had a lot of the early Sega like 80s arcade games on it, which were awesome games. It was a little graphically, it was a notch above the NES, but the Sega Genesis was superior.
Yeah, well, really, I think it's safe that we're gonna go with the Genesis. That being said, I want to go over maybe just like some of the concept that we have going on here. Usually, we'll go over the game, talk about if it's pretty crappy or if it's a fun game. Then we'll talk about what captivated us graphically, because it doesn't matter. It could be the worst game in the world, and if it still has the great graphics, I think it's something worth pointing out, don't you think? And also, I want to go and compare how did it compare to its predecessors or the competition. And would we recommend others to play it? And then towards the end, we'll go ahead and vote. So I think each of us have about a couple games we're going to go over and then call it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm going to kick it over to you, Dimitri. We're going to have you kick off the first game as to what you had in mind.
Right, so I'm going to start off with a relatively unknown game. I think it's safe to say, something called Jewel Master.
Yes.
And the only reason I actually came to owning this game was because of the awesome box art, which hopefully is flashing across the screen right now. That box art kind of motivated me to beg my mom to buy it, even though I had no idea what the game was about.
Yeah.
And box art aside, I mean, I'm also a sucker for games that are very colorful and have like a bright palette. And just from the beginning of it, it takes kind of place in like a jungle or like a forest type deal, and it kind of has shades of Altered Beast, but it's nothing like it. And yeah, just like that bright color palette right from the beginning, and then you go across a few different landscapes throughout the whole game. Like you start off in a forest, you're in an ice cavern at one point, and then you're in a desert as well. So it's a relatively short game. There was never a sequel or anything. It was developed in-house by Sega. So I don't think they really had any plans to do anything with this like as a franchise or anything. It's just like a one-off kind of game. But you could definitely tell that since it's a Sega-produced game, that they kind of knew the hardware's limits and knew what to do with it.
Yeah, and I think that's very safe to say. And I don't think we should be afraid to mention that we actually played this recently. I never played it, so me and you, Dimitri, we actually dove into the game and killed it in what, like a couple hours? Man, like,
yeah, you can complete it in like at least 2.5 hours.
Yeah, how could I say this? That game was truly the stuff of legends. The worst quote I've ever seen. Spoiler alert! At the end of the game.
The ending is pretty dog shit, unfortunately.
But honestly, was this a good game or was it a pretty shitty game? I mean, in your honest opinion, I thought it was fine.
it was well, I'd say it was more than fine. I mean, the basic concept of the game is you have these 9 rings you can choose from, and combining one ring with the other gives you a totally different power up and a totally different weapon. So you have to go through the game kind of mixing and matching different rings as you pick them up, and it's like, I don't know, I haven't really seen that concept being played like that too often, if ever, outside of this game.
Yeah.
So, Mike, it seems like you've been trying to butt in with something.
No, it was just, I never heard of this game until
Yeah.
you just. So the first time I saw it was looking at some YouTube videos. I think it definitely has a very early Sega feel to it. I don't think it matches up quite as well with some of the later Sega games.
Yeah, well, it came out in 1991, so they were just trying to, I guess, figure out what they can do with the console. And you outside of the bright design, you do get like some spots where you can see them putting in the extra effort, whether it be like the boss on the first stage, you fight a tiger, and it's got some really smooth motions to the tiger, the way it goes from side to side.
Yeah.
But then as well as on the ice stage, as you're walking over like this frozen lake, and you kind of see the background a little bit, and it's just little touches like that kind of...
Yeah, the backgrounds did look nice for an early game. I thought the main character looked a little bit stiff. That would probably be my like his animations compared to later, obviously Sega animations.
Real quick, a round of votes on it. Hey, do you guys think it holds up today? I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. I think it does. A little bit of hesitation, Dimitri.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
Of course, you would give it. And what about you, Mike?
I'm gonna say no. I think the box art holds up better than the game. The box art is pretty epic.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, it's still worth diving into, just to give it a little roundsy. All right, well, all right, that was a good go on the first one. We'll kick it off to you, Mike. And what do you think really your graphical game of choice?
I had a hard time with this one. Doing my research, I remembered so many amazing looking Sega games. There's a lot of different ways to go, and a lot are getting left off of our list. But my pick is definitely a Dynamite Heady. Awesome little platforming game. Came out pretty late in the Sega lifestyle in 1994. And, you play as kind of like a puppet, like a little marionette. The whole thing's in this little toy marionette world, and it also mixed in some of those cool 3D graphics that we all liked seeing in the early 90s. It's nice and bright and colorful. The backgrounds look amazing. The character animations are good. The enemy sprites are super detailed. It's just a fun game, and there's no slowdown. There's a lot going on the screen, and there's never any slowdown with the game.
So how do you think it would compare a bit against its obvious competition of Sonic? Could we put that in the same realm and compare the two, or are they just kind of like leagues of their own at that point?
No, I think they're pretty similar games, especially later Sonics when they really were honing in on that Sonic craft. I think Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles are probably the best looking Sonic games, and I think Dynamite Heady's right up there.
Yeah. But, all right, and would you recommend others to play it on its presentation?
Oh, absolutely. I would recommend you to play it just off of looks. I think it's one of the best looking games on the Sega Genesis.
All right, and all right, well, let's go ahead and give this one a round of votes. I remember playing it on the Sega channel. I had a lot of fun with it. So I'm gonna have to give it a yes. I'm a platformer mark. I can't get enough of those 2D platformers, so give me a yes. What about you, Dimitri?
Although the game does look really good, like I said before, I'm a sucker for really bright and colorful games, and this is very colorful, and it's got a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I think the first boss is like some giant contraption that you have to follow and like hit as you're tailing behind it. So definitely has a lot of stuff going on. The only thing I'd say is this game is hard as balls. And for that reason, I would not say it holds up because it is really tough.
All right. And you, Mike, would we give it assuming yes?
As someone who also had the Sega channel, I would give it a yes. I'm going to stick with my Sega channel, brethren.
All right. Well, there we go with that one. And it kind of brings it back to me. You made a mention. You gave it a dead giveaway, but anybody would have mentioned this. Sonic 3 / Sonic and Knuckles would be my obvious pick, and I think it's safe to say that the game is a really fun game. It was really tailored for the American audience. I mean, we even got that infamous Michael Jackson music. I know you're gonna argue me, Dimitri, but that is legit. They write it off the books. They're not gonna let you know. There's sources on the internet for crying.
No, I mean there's a one level where you can clearly hear that Michael Jackson like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like sprinkled throughout the level. It's kind of obvious.
Without a doubt. And as it being one of the final true 2D Sonics, it really took advantage, like graphically. What captivated me, of course, really taking advantage of like fully animated backgrounds, but still staying tried and true to the original formula of if it's not freaking broken, don't fix it. How does it compare against its predecessors? Again, like maybe.
Well, each game always adds a little bit of new something to the formula.
But as far as would I recommend it? Of course, I would recommend it to old generation, new generation, today, tomorrow, future, present, past. Everybody needs as much as everybody needs to play a Mario game, everybody needs to play a Sonic game, and especially these games. It's everything that a video game should be. So, with a round of votes, do we think it holds up today? I'm gonna give it an astounding yes. Dimitri?
No, I like Sonic 2 better.
Oh, you son of a bitch. All right, and that's fine. That's very valid. And Mike, what are your little things on it?
It is a fantastic. They're both fantastic looking games, 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. But
yes.
Given my complaints with the Sonic games, I'm probably gonna say no.
Yeah. Also, I think unfortunately Sonic 3 is the beginning of the end for Sonic with the side characters. Because after they introduced Tails in 2, it's like, all right, now we have an Echidna, which who knows what the hell that is. And then it just got out of hand by the time they got to like Sonic Adventure or Sonic 2006 or whatever, when he's like making out with like a human princess.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
All right, well, we're gonna have to squash that topic and transition our way in the most awkward way possible to you, Dimitri, to your other game that you had in mind as a graphical powerhouse.
The next game I wanted to talk about is another game I spent a lot of time playing, and that's Castlevania Bloodlines, which for Genesis fans, which is such a bizarre concept to think of it now. When you think of a game being released, it's like, okay, obviously you're getting the same game on PS3, PS4, Xbox, and Xbox 360. But back in the day, that wasn't the case. You got a Castlevania game on Super Nintendo, you weren't getting the same Castlevania game on Genesis, and the same thing went for like other spin-off games like Jurassic Park, the game, for an example. Completely different on both platforms. So Super Castlevania 4 came out in 91, and there was a full 3-year gap with Castlevania on Sega, and then Bloodlines came out in 1994. Yeah. So they had 2 characters you could choose from, one with a trident, which was a little bizarre. And another thing is I have a soft spot for games that have you traveling through the world in different spots. So I have a soft spot for those type of games that have that little world hopping. Yeah. And overall, like, everybody, when they think of Castlevania during this era, they think of the Mode 7 level for Super Nintendo, where you're like walking in that corridor and it's spinning. So that's not to say that the Genesis couldn't pull off a few tricks of its own. And there's one cool area where you start off in the level, and there's this water level that's rising, and it's completely reflecting the stage on the other side. And also, it did use some Mode 7 like stuff with this one boss battle that actually takes place on top of like a castle or some column, and it's like has some spinning motion and spinning effects. So they definitely did some stuff taking advantage of the blast processing hardware to kind of add their own little spin on the franchise. And it was nice hearing the classic Castlevania tunes in that Genesis. Yeah, but it's not as bad. No, the controlling wasn't as tight, unfortunately. But since we're just talking about the aesthetics of the game, I definitely think it still holds up. With even the monsters in the game too look pretty cool.
So compared to Super Castlevania, like as far as like how it compares to the predecessor, or would you call it its competition? It's like in competition with itself at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. I personally like the way it looks better on the Genesis. I mean, overall sound aside, we obviously all know that it's far superior on the Super Nintendo, but I like the way the Bloodlines looked more than Super Castlevania 4, but that's probably just me.
That's good to hear.
I'm a Genesis fanboy at heart.
Yeah. So, needless to say, you would definitely recommend to play based on its presentation.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those forgotten Castlevania games, really. I don't think people were even aware of its existence because Super Castlevania 4 just kind of took over.
So, round of votes, do you think it holds up today, truthfully?
Aside from the controls, which is a little bit rough to get used to, I'll admit that. I think it does because, like I said, I like that globe-trotting. Because usually in some Castlevania games, you're just in the castle, but this you're like in different landscapes and stuff, so I think that was a cool little twist. So yes, from me.
All right, and as for me, I haven't really had a chance to play it. I actually saw it available recently digitally, so I'll be looking forward to playing that. As I give every Castlevania a shot, even Castlevania 64s, which were actually okay in its own right, even though they were a mess. So I'll give it a yes. And Mike, you?
I haven't logged a whole lot of like gameplay hours in, but I think it's a fantastic looking game. I think it looks just as good as any other Castlevania game, so I'm gonna say yes.
All right, excellent.
Hey.
Resounding yes.
Our first consensus, I think.
Yeah. All right. Anyhow, we're gonna have Mike close this out with his other pick of a game as far as graphically superior for this Genesis.
Well, I'm a huge fan of beat 'em up games, those old school beat 'em ups, and Comic Zone I think is the best looking one on the Sega Genesis. I mean, this, obviously if you're not familiar with the game, you play as like an illustrator for a comic book who gets sucked in by his own creation, and you have to fight your way through the panels.
Yeah.
And
sounds like something out of Cool World.
and it's just beautiful looking. It's got great colors. It's got great backgrounds. I mean, they actually really nailed the comic book art style of the early 90s. Game came out in 95, so I suppose it's mid 90s. But
jumping through panels and such.
Yeah, and it's those little touches like that. The way when you hit a guy, he'll rip through a panel, and how the enemies are drawn in. Like a hand comes in, and they start off black and white, and it sketches them right in, and then you have to fight them. Like that's a really cool feature. And everything hurts you. Like you have to punch through obstacles, and it does damage. But I think it only takes a little over an hour if you can actually beat it.
So is there any competition for that particular game, like what we can compare it to?
Streets of Rage, maybe, and like the beat 'em up category.
Battletoads.
Yeah, Battletoads makes sense. That's colorful as well.
Yeah, and how would you recommend it, like based on its presentation at this point?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. Like I said, it nails that comic book art style. And you get to play as the most 90s looking guy. If you want to know what bad style in the 90s looked like, it's the main character of that game.
Kind of had a little bit of that grunge, like it was like the ripped, or it was like the vest with the white shirt and like the black specs.
Yeah, and like, the kind of shaved sides with little going over, and little round glasses too.
Yeah. That's great. Good call. But round of votes. Do you think it holds up today? I'm gonna hit it first. As great as the game looks, good lord, is that game frickin' hard. So it's gonna be hard to give it a strong recommendation. So I'm gonna have to give it a no. and not based on my personal. I sucked at it when I was a kid. I'd like to go back and revisit it just to see if like maybe my older skill level will be able to handle it, but I'll have to say no for now, just to be fair. Kick it over to you, Dimitri, as far as your vote.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this game came out so late in the Genesis life cycle that people were already looking towards the Saturn and the PlayStation that it kind of got forgotten a little bit. However, it had really a big impact because I've seen at least 2 interviews that I can recall of just like people reminiscing about the Genesis and stuff, and I've heard like all the time people are like, what was that one game where you're like a comic book guy going through the thing, and then somebody else comes like, oh, Comic Zone. I was like, yeah, that game was awesome. So I'd recommend it based off of that, just the presentation of the game and like the uniqueness factor. So it would definitely get a yes from me.
All right, and Mike, I think it's safe to say that you're gonna go ahead and give it a yes as well.
Well, I actually picked this game up the other day, and I can say with my advanced age and gaming skills, it's still just as hard as it was back in the day. So you're probably not going to have any more fun with it. But I like hard games. I like to be challenged, so...
Also, I have some honorable mentions, if we can get into that real quick, since I believe we're in the wrap-up.
Yeah, we are in the wrap-up.
All right, some honorable mentions. I think Vector Man, we brought up earlier. That's definitely one that went for the 3D look. as well as a game called Alien Soldier, which looked really pretty. I've never played it, but I've seen it on some Genesis lists, and I've seen a few YouTube video clips of it.
Oh, well,
Disney's Aladdin as well. I think everybody can agree that it looked far superior on the Genesis, and plus you could actually throw swords and stuff, and unlike the centered version of the Super Nintendo.
Where you throw apples, yeah.
Yeah, I also want to give a quick shout out to Quackshot, which as well had you traveling the world as well, like I had mentioned before with Bloodlines, and also Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, if only for the 16-bit-ized versions of his songs of the day.
Oh, it was so good. Man, these are all, well, I don't know how some of these went over my head. I didn't even consider these.
Blast processing, bro.
Yeah. And on that note, folks, we're going to go ahead and close this out. Went over a little bit longer than I expected, but it was well worth it. I would say so myself. And go ahead and like this video, subscribe, comment, let us know your great-looking Genesis games, and then in the process, go ahead and check out Turbo Ether's Facebook page, Facebook/Turbo Ether, and go ahead and subscribe to that Twitter. Follow us at the Turbo Ether. And on that note, folks, we are going to close it out here. Check you later on the next rendition of A Pixel Above the Rest. And on that note, folks, take care, and may the Triforce be with you.